Hi, and welcome to the Keep Indiana Learning YouTube channel, or whatever social media platform you are finding us on today. We're on all of them. I am Marty Hoofer, the Digital Content Manager, and I'm excited to be here today with Courtney Flessner. She is the Assistant Director of Keep Indiana Learning, and I was telling her before the show, she's one of my favorite mathy people, so I'm just making up words. Mathy's not a word, Courtney. I'm well aware of that, but you're a mathy person, so that's what you're going to talk about today. Are all the resources available to Indiana teachers in the math areas?
Great. Thanks, Marty, so much. I'm really excited about this because I have spent, and all of the mathy people at Keep Indiana Learning have spent the last year really getting to know the new 2023 standards, all of the resources the DOE have put out there to help us think about how to implement the standards, how the checkpoints, and the assessments that are happening within the checkpoints are going to play into that. And we've put together some programming to help everybody process that. And I wanted to be able to do this live stream today just to communicate what we're thinking about and how you teachers and educators out there might be thinking about it too, and how we might be able to help. So we're just going to dig in here. I could talk and talk and talk, but I'm going to work really hard on being succinct.
That's a great word.
So here we go.
Hold on, before you jump in, could you clear that timer off your Canvas screen?
Oh.
Thanks. I'm betting you hit a number 3 and that popped that nifty little timer up there. Oh, well, that's a new look.
Hold on.
All right, because I know on some of your future slides, we need to see what's under there. So thank you. Appreciate it. No problem.
Got that timer. See, I'm imperfect, but I'm cool with that. So here are all of the things that the terms and words that are out there that we are thinking about as teachers and educators in terms of really not just math, definitely ELA too, grades K to 12, but the checkpoints are specific to grades 3 to 8. So we've got standards, we've got the frameworks, we have the blueprints, we have the checkpoints, we have the item specifications, and then we're thinking about tier 1 instruction, tier 2 instruction, and high quality instructional materials. So there's a lot that has been kind of thrown at us. And when we look at all of these documents closely, there's a lot on the documents. They're very dense with information. The good news is the information is all really good information. It's information that we need in the hands of our teachers so that they can create opportunities to learn for all of our students. So it's really important that these documents are taken seriously. Now, the problem is, how do we make that happen in our schools when our teachers are doing so many things? And what's the best way to guide them through that process? And so what I'm going to do in this live stream is just kind of go through this list, talk really briefly about each one of these bullet points and how we are putting together our programming at Keep Indiana Learning to make it possible to help you have a plan for implementing in your classroom and get ready for those checkpoint assessments.
So Courtney, before you jump into those standards, just a quick question. Those first 5 things are all available on the department's website, correct?
Yep, you can get all 5 of those through the In-Learning Lab. A lot of them are linked to each other. And I might put together a blog post just to kind of explain all of that and show how they're all linked so that maybe we can document that later. But yeah, you can find these all on the In-Learning Lab, and they're, once you get there, they're super easily accessible.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right, so first we've got our standards, and our standards were reduced. Like, hopefully this isn't new news to anyone, right? And so what happened in this instance was we're sort of wondering, did they just eliminate standards? And in some instances, yes, they did. In other instances, the standard has shifted, so it might be, you might see more of it in grade 3 instead of in grade 2. And in some instances, when the standard is gone, it's gone, but it's covered in the standard that's still there. And you definitely see that in the frameworks. So you really, really, really have to understand the frameworks, okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in 1 second. There's also a shift in the standard of some of the wording that's really opening up this idea of how we want children to be thinking about and doing math. So like one example is the old standards had the term use models, using models all over the place. But now they're using model as a verb. So rather than having using models at the end of the standard, they're starting the standard with the word model. So it's still there, but it's putting more emphasis on how we want the kids doing and thinking about math. And then we also want to be thinking about, because of these shifts and because of these reductions, we want to be thinking about prerequisite skills. So if we want a child to be successful at, say, fluently adding and subtracting multi-digit whole numbers, we have to be thinking to ourselves, what do they need to know beforehand so that they can be successful at doing that? And because some of those standards are gone, or because they've been shifted in different ways, we have to think really hard about making sure, are we covering what we need to cover so that kids can be successful throughout their entire progression of math? So knowing the content, knowing what the standard really means and what it's about is more important than ever. The frameworks do an incredible job at that. You know, in the past, we hear the term unpack the standards, find the verbs, do all these things with unpacking the standards. You don't want to unpack the standards. You want to unpack the frameworks. And if you dig into the course for the Future Focused Learning series that's also on the In-Learning Lab, there are materials that you can use to help teachers unpack the frameworks. But that's where the meat is. The meat is in the framework. It's not in those 1, 2, 3 sentences that's written in the standard. So spending time with the frameworks is incredibly important, and we want to be focusing on unpacking our standards, okay? The state has also defined which standards are essential, and they've done that by this example over here on the right shows if it's gray, then it's an essential standard, and it also has an E at the end of it. So your standards, you know, have kind of been unpacked for you. So now we're going to unpack the framework. Your essential standards have been decided for you. So you don't have to spend a lot of time doing that now. So you have time to be focusing on really understanding the content that you are required to teach in your grade level or in your course. And in some instances, there's been a lot of changes made. So spending time with that content is more important than ever. Next, we have the frameworks. And I love the way that the frameworks are broken in. They start with evidence statements and academic vocabulary. And the evidence statements is really like, what specifically do we want kids doing in order to master this standard? And then the clarification statements, like, boom, there's like many bullet points with clarification statements. So if we want kids mastering this standard, what are all the things they should know and be able to do? And that is offered up in the clarification statements. Incredibly, incredibly important. And then they do this great job at sort of helping you start to think about your instructional planning, both at Tier 1 and Tier 2, by offering up what are some common misconceptions that kids might make when they are working on mastering the standard. So that's a very handy tool. And then they also have the looking back and looking ahead. On the last slide, I talked about those prerequisite skills. Still important to think about the prereqs, because sometimes there's more to it than what's listed in that looking back. And it's also really important to think that it's not necessarily a standard that's carried on in grade, beyond grade 2, like this example here on the screen, but it's an important concept for new concepts that are coming on down the line. So it's really important to hit those clarification statements because of future math that they're going to be doing in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade and beyond. So frameworks, really important. We need to focus on unpacking the frameworks. Next, we've got the blueprints and the checkpoints. So because of these 3 checkpoints that have been defined for us, the state put together just a calendar of here are the standards that are going to be covered during this particular checkpoint. And so our curricular calendars are kind of already given to us, right? Like they can, or they should, it's kind of your decision, guide your curricular calendar. So we have to think really hard about what are our, what resources, textbooks, curriculum materials do we already have, and how do we need to sort of adjust the order that we're teaching in order to make sure that we're hitting the standards for these checkpoints at this time. So that is a piece of the puzzle for sure. And then the other piece of the puzzle is, what about the standards that aren't covered during the different checkpoints? So when you look closely at those blueprints, sometimes nothing's done until it's assessed, possibly on the summative assessment. And so when we're making our curricular calendars, we have to ask ourselves, where are we going to put in all these other standards? We can't just teach them all, at the end of March and April when it's time to do that. We actually are going to have to think about how can we add these to our curriculum throughout the year in order for it to make sense. And there's a lot of really wonderful instances where the standards that aren't going to be assessed on a checkpoint can easily be added to a checkpoint time. So what we've done at Keep Indiana Learning is we have started putting together these documents that show these are the standards that are included in this checkpoint. These are 100% going to be covered on the checkpoint assessment. And then we have at the bottom, here are some additional standards that you could teach during this time, because they align very nicely with the skills and concepts that are required during that time. So in the programming that we are offering, participants will get these documents to be able to take back and share with their people and be able to say, listen, let's think about our curricular calendar. Let's think about all the things that we have to teach, and let's map it out accordingly so that we are covering all of the standards and we're not doing this big old crunch time, in April before it's time to give that final summative assessment.
And I love that idea, because if you take that approach, it allows you nicely to cycle back through some of those to give that
Absolutely. And that comes into how we are thinking about our tier 1 and tier 2 instruction, which I'm going to get to in just 1 minute. So excellent foreshadowing there, Marty. So the other thing that is coming out are the item specifications. And currently the only ones that are out are grade 3, but I know the others are being worked on. They're coming out soon. These look really, really different. These have content limits, clarifications, expected vocabulary, model tasks that students should be doing, examples at varying levels. They have what's an easy problem look like for this standard, what's a medium one look like, what's a difficult one look like, and then they have proficiency level descriptors. So if a child can do this one, that means that they're below proficiency. If they can do the next one, they're approaching. If they can do the next one, they're at. If they can do the next one, they're above proficiency. So the next thing, not just the frameworks are we working with, we're working with those item specifications. And these two documents are working with each other, okay? You can't just rely on the item specifications to understand what your students need to be able to do mathematically. So it's really, really important that as you are planning and making curricular decisions, you're using your frameworks and you're using the item specifications to be thinking about, okay, how am I going to teach? How am I going to assess? And then how am I going to alter my instruction based on the assessment that I just did? So there's just a lot to think about in these really, really great documents.
So let me ask you one more question. I never take off my ELA teacher hat. Item specifications coming out for ELA as well as math?
Yeah. And same with, the checkpoints also are for grades 3 through 8 have the ELA, and we're offering programming on that too. So what I'm talking to you about today is not just for math. I'm focusing on all of the things that are out there for math. Maybe we can get one of our specialists that are focusing on ELA to do this too, to help everybody sort of understand what's out there. But this programming, where we're thinking about, okay, how do we know our standards? How do we unpack our frameworks? How do we plan for our checkpoints? What are the prerequisite skills? what's our tier 1 instruction look like? What are all the curricular materials out there that will help guide us with that tier 1 instruction? And then what does our tier 2 instruction look like? And that's what takes me to this next slide. I'm not going to read all of this to you. This is a great time if you want to, and you're watching this, to take a screenshot and read through it later. And, you know, we all know what tier 1 instruction is, but sometimes I wonder, do we really know what that means in math? Because what I hear a lot in schools is planning for tier 2 instruction without really having mastered what's happening in tier 1. So how much formative assessment are we doing in tier 1 instruction? How often are we allowing for flexible grouping? How often are we scaffolding? What are we doing to differentiate our instruction? And what does that look like? What tools are we using? There's a lot to think about. And what's cool about the checkpoint system is that we can start thinking just about checkpoint 1. I'm going to look at these 5 standards and the couple few that I've decided that will work well with those 5. And I'm going to plan just for this. What does my tier 1 instruction look like right now during this chunk of time? So in the programming that we're offering, we have one session that's all about that. It's all about the tier 1 instruction for each checkpoint. Prerequisite skills, understanding the content, planning for the content, thinking about all the curricular materials that are going to make the teaching and learning during that time frame awesome. Okay. And that's what we're going for, because every child deserves awesome instruction from the very get-go. They all deserve a high quality general curriculum. Okay. When we move into our tier 2 instruction, that's when we've used those formative assessments, both that we've seen in our classrooms and the information that we get back from the checkpoints. I don't know what that data is going to look like. I don't know how those, that data is going to be read. Or how we read it to understand what our kids need more help on. But I suspect it will be very helpful, right? So we have our formative assessments that we've done in our own classrooms. And then we have the formative checkpoint assessment. And then the question becomes, what do we do now? What do we do for the kids who need that tier 2 instruction? So the other thing that we're offering, we've got one session for every checkpoint on tier 1 instruction. And then we have another session for every checkpoint on tier 2 instruction. What do you do for the kids who are still struggling to understand concepts, who are right on the verge, who are maybe below proficient, but they're almost at a proficiency, like they're showing a lot of really good evidence of what they know and can do, and how do we push them to the next level? So what we are offering here at Keep Indiana Learning is an opportunity to come to us, to look at your high quality instructional materials that you have adopted, or that you're, anxiously waiting the lists to come out, as we're still waiting in mathematics, which is fine. But a lot of people have done adoption recently, so that's fine. But how do we use those high quality instructional materials to plan for our tier 1 and tier 2 instruction? And then what do we need to supplement or complement those resources? And what are all the different materials and there's so many good resources out in our world that are free. We don't have to Google, how do I teach adding 3-digit numbers? There's some great stuff out there. We have that list of all of that here at Keep Indiana Learning. But we don't just want to give it to people. We want people to know how to use it, and how it's connecting to the standards, and how it's helping them reach a mastery level, and so that they come out as at proficient or above proficient in our final assessments, which is, one thing that we're aiming for in mathematics. Many other things like critical thinkers, problem solvers, collaborative working. There's lots of things we're aiming for in mathematics, but we can't get, we're still living in a world of testing. Yeah. So we want to help you do that. So what we've done is Jeff Harker and I are going to be teaching these workshops together. So the checkpoint 1, tier 1 instruction workshop is happening on July 17th. Tier 2 then is happening on October 1st. So the idea is we want everybody to have the tier 1 workshop well in advance of that checkpoint timing coming up, so that they can plan and they can think and they can get ready. And then the tier 2 session comes, okay, we have data, we have student work, we have stuff we're going to bring to you. Will you help us process this? Can we work with other people that are in the group to process this? And the answer to that is yes. It's not just about learning from me and Jeff. It's about learning from everybody that's there and collaborating and thinking together. We learn better in groups like that. We just do. So checkpoint 1 is coming up, July 17th. We have a short summer, so we have to get it done, right? So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is October 1st. And then for tier 1 instruction checkpoint 2, we're doing that October 17th because we got to get ready for that time span. Tier 2, January 21st. And then again, January 23rd for checkpoint 3, and then March 13th. So again, this is a great thing to take a screenshot of. And then when you go to our website, keepindianalearning.org, or you can go to kinl.cc/math, and it takes you directly to our workshops just for math. And you will see these workshops there, navigating the math standards for checkpoint number 1. It's not the exact name, but you'll know what it is when you see it for sure. And you sign up for that, and you get the materials, you get the opportunity to brainstorm, you get guided instruction on how to unpack those frameworks, guided instruction on planning for your tier 1 and tier 2 instruction for kids, with our main goal here being a chance to create an opportunity for every child to learn and be successful at mathematics. Like, that's what we're going for here. And we've sort of been given a gift to be able to think about this in chunks, and everybody's going to be in the same boat, like curricular calendars are generally going to look the same now. So when we bring people all over from the state together to have those conversations, they're kind of in the same space, teaching the same thing, which is super handy for a collaborative learning experience. So anybody out there that has questions, doesn't matter when you're watching this, you can contact me or Jeff. Our emails are on the screen, another great screen to take a screenshot of, or reach out at any time. We are more than happy to help clarify any help that you need, but that's just the thing. Like, we are here to help. We want the teaching and learning of math in Indiana to be awesome. We want everyone to love doing it. We want everyone to love learning it. And we are working very hard to create the space to make that happen. So join us.
So much info, Courtney. I love it. Would you mind going back a slide?
Sure.
Question about this. Let's say for whatever reason, here, I'll just make up a scenario. New teacher is hired on July 15th, and they don't get here by July 17th. Could you come to just the checkpoint 2 session if you missed the checkpoint 1?
Absolutely. Every single one of these is a la carte. So in one way, that's sort of annoying. If you want to sign up for all 6 sessions, you have to do that 6 times. I'm sorry. Right. But we didn't want to force anyone to have to do something that they don't want to do, or maybe they want to come to checkpoint 1 and see if it's going to help, and then decide if they're going to engage in checkpoint 2. Right. So yeah, everything's a la carte. If you only want to do the tier 2 workshops because you feel like you've got the tier 1 instruction down, okay, come to tier 2. And then maybe next year you'll be like, maybe I should have done the tier 1 one. I feel like I would have learned a lot at that session too. You can do those next year. There's a lot of different possibilities here. And here's the thing, the required, what's happening this year is many schools are piloting this, right? So it's not required. So we wanted to start the programming this year, whether you're piloting or whether you're waiting for the 25-26 school year. You can do this now, or if you want to wait to do the math next year, we'll offer these same sessions next year when everybody's required to do that checkpoint testing. So these are just this year's dates.
Love it. And you said there's similar setup for ELA as well.
Yeah. So again, you can go to this same website and, is it /reading?
And I think it's,
I can't remember.
I don't know.
That's okay. We're not, we're imperfect, Marty.
We are. We're very good at being imperfect. What I can tell you is if you go to keepindianalearning.org and then go to upcoming live events, there's the list. On the left, you could click ELA or math,
and
Yep.
it'll show you all the things. So
Yep.
yeah, Courtney, I don't know what the backslash is.
But they are offering the exact same thing for ELA to help you plan that curriculum. So there's a lot out there. Maybe this year you want to do ELA and next year you want to do math or vice versa. The point is it's got to get done, right?
Right.
And you don't have to invent this process all on your own. We can help you with the process. If you're a member, you can use member credits. If you're an ESC member, there's discounts. Like there's a lot of opportunity to be able to make this happen. So
yeah, I love that. And, thinking about it, that maybe, you're in a school that you've got 4 teachers, 2 of them go to math and 2 of them go to ELA, and then you like divide and conquer. I appreciate the flexibility that there is in the way these have been set up, and taking resources that are out there and making them digestible. And really, ultimately, this saves teachers time. And you and I are both former teachers, we know that's the one thing there's not enough of, is there's not enough time. So this is ultimately a time saver, which is fantastic.
It is. And I'm just working really hard to help everybody see this as an opportunity. Like this is an opportunity to be great. This is an opportunity to do a little bit of rethinking. And opportunities to be great should not be passed up, right?
Yeah.
And we just want to help with that process. You don't have to invent it on your own. It'd be awesome if everybody can invent everything on their own. Maybe that would be awesome. Maybe I don't agree with that statement. We can talk about that in another live stream, but we don't have to work in silos. We can work together, and that collaborative experience is an incredible opportunity to learn. So just creating that space.
Absolutely. Well, Courtney, thank you for your time. It's been great having this information, and honestly, even just having a better understanding of those 5 original pieces, and then how Keep Indiana Learning is coming along to really just help you take these resources and use them most effectively. That's beautiful. So anything else you want to share?
I don't think so. I'm just going to say, yay, math, go math. Let's not forget about math. Right? I'm offering my first 20 days-ish of school workshop July 16th. I think it's the day before that July 17th one. So you could come spend a couple days with me. That's all about creating the culture of math in your classroom and creating a space where everybody is excited about being there and excited about doing the math. And it goes right along with your curriculum. It's not a separate thing. It goes with what you're doing, and if we want children to feel successful in a subject area that, let's face it, a lot of people just don't, we have to create an environment where they can do that. So that workshop, I haven't offered that workshop, Marty, live in like 5 years.
Yeah.
And I've made a lot of changes to it, a lot of adaptations, because there's a lot more. There's new material out, there's new resources, there's new things to think about. And I'm really excited about that. So I know it's a lot to ask of people in the summer. Summer is short, your break is short, but there's just a tiny little bit of time might inspire you, just a tiny little bit, to be awesome in math.
Yes, I would agree with that. I would say, just for teachers, man, choose wisely. Summer is short, so choose, like, if we think about nutrient-rich foods, we want to choose those. Choose nutrient-rich PD for your brain, and use those limited days wisely. So, Courtney, thank you so much for unpacking this today, and I look forward to hearing more about what's coming next. We'll try to loop in some ELA folks and do something similar. So, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Marty.
Have a great afternoon.